Welcome to the Simple Sophisticate podcast, where intelligent living is paired with signature style. I'm your host, Shannon Ables. And whether you're listening on your commute, exercising, working in the garden, or sitting down with a hot cup of tea or a café au lait, thank you for tuning in. Let's get started. Welcome to the 214th episode of the Simple Sophisticate and the annual Ask Shannon episode. Before we get to today's episode, I'd like to introduce you to one of our sponsors. A touch of Provence luxury for your skin. True's Skincare and Apothecary offers botanical facial oil that combines lavender essential oil from the Provence region of France with hydrating botanical oils to bring daily nourishment to the delicate facial skin and décolletage. With just 4 to 5 drops, both morning and evening, True's facial oil forms a hydration barrier against harsh environments our skin is exposed to during daily life. Free from synthetic chemicals and harsh detergents and made in small batches, all products are sourced from certified growers maintaining ethical practices. Find comfort in your daily skincare rituals with the best in botanical luxury. As a listener of this podcast, True's is offering a special discount of $30 off your purchase with the promo code SIMPLE. Visit trueskin.com today. I am ready to dive in. I have 6 pages of questions, and that's even an edited version. There were so many other questions, but I was trying to cultivate about an hour's worth of an episode. So we'll see if we're in that window. I've tried to organize them by categories as well, and I will have the show notes that coordinate with this with regards to links that we talk about. I want to thank everyone who sent me questions. So many of the questions actually kind of dovetailed into other readers' questions, so I tried to pick questions that were very common so that the majority of emails were answered. I do have a petit plaisir as well for this episode, so stay tuned for the end, and I will share that with you. It's a Francophile podcast that you might want to download or subscribe to listen to. I have been enjoying it as of late. But we've got to get into this because we have a lot of fantastic questions from listeners. We're going to start with health and beauty. But just to give you a heads up, there are so many different categories. We're going to talk about relationships. We're going to talk about the French language. We're going to talk about work and living. And I'm going to even share with you an excerpt from my new book, Living the Simply Luxurious Life, Making the Everydays Extraordinary and Discovering Your Best Self. We'll also talk about food. We have a question with regards to family and young children as far as dressing for school. Since I'm a teacher, I'll do my best to answer that question. But we're going to begin with a question in the health and beauty section from Sharala in Phoenix, Arizona. And her question is, I ran a half marathon 10 years ago in my early 30s and am currently training to walk a half marathon in Missoula, Montana this July. If all goes well, I'd like to set my sights on walking a full marathon before the end of the year. You have mentioned walking a marathon in the past. Can you offer us a glimpse into your training, the race or course you chose and why you chose it, your favorite shoes, how you fit the very long training walks into your schedule, and any other tidbits you'd like to share regarding walking a marathon? All right, so great question, Sharala. And well, if you're already training for a half marathon, you're halfway there, and it'll be so much simpler to be ready to go for that marathon. I'd never done a half marathon. I only just went right into doing marathons, and it was absolutely doable. And I have no doubt in my mind that you'll be able to do that very, very well by the end of this year. First of all, both my marathons were done in Portland in 2008 and 2010, and I still look back on both of those races very fondly. There's an amazing adrenaline rush that we hear about that happens after you finish something similar to a marathon. And simply, it's true. And equally as simple, it is difficult to explain exactly what it is if you haven't experienced it. But it is something to the effect of a confidence boost that you may have never felt before, or something similar to accomplishing a significantly huge task that you thought maybe was impossible. So I encourage anyone who has thought about competing in a marathon, whether it's walking or running, to do it, because it was something that I look back and remind myself, wow, that was possible. So how do you train for it? Well, like I said, you've already done a half marathon, or will be here next month. Good luck and enjoy Missoula. It's, as you probably already know, fantastically gorgeous up there. I knew my marathon was going to be in October. Portland's marathon is in October. I know they're rearranging it right now, but in the past it was in October. And so I started my training sessions in the end of May, beginning of June, again, knowing that I was going to be out of school, so I'd have more time to do my trainings and have more energy. I followed a 4 to 5 month program, and I included a link to one that is similar to what I followed. I couldn't find the exact one, but it might actually be the exact same one because it looks very similar with regards to your buildup of distances. And what you would want to do is just start where you already are, what distances you are already able to do with your training, and cut off a few of the months with regards to preparation. And as you know, the Saturday or Sunday run every weekend is the long one. And then you do have a day rest, and you slowly build up that long run. And the longest for a marathon is about 18 to 20 miles in one day. And then you gradually decline that the few weeks before the race so your body recovers. And I stand by that training. I did that each time. I did it with my dogs as well. And I had friends or family members that were going to do it with me, although most of the training I did on my own. But it's absolutely doable, and you're going to do great. So tell me all about it when you finish the race, because I'm excited for you. I cannot tell you how much of a beautiful memory it was for myself. As far as shoes, I wore Nikes, but it wasn't anything fancy. I think it was cross trainers. I wore the same shoes that I trained in. I think that's important. And I also included a link to a post from Runner's World on how to best prepare with regards to your clothing and just those kind of things, your shoes and all those different details that make a big difference in feeling comfortable while you're racing. And you probably already know about those too, but those are there on the show notes if you would like some more tips and tricks on preparing for success, which is going to happen. Absolutely. So that's our first question, and I hope that answered that. Good luck with marathon running. It is quite an accomplishment and definitely a personal challenge to take on. Our second question with regards to health and beauty is from Lizette, and she asks, "Hi, Shannon. How do you continue to eat well while maintaining your weight as you age?" And I am not afraid to say my age. I've shared it many times in the podcast, so let's give an example with regards to what I do. Everyone's different with regards to their metabolism and their genetics, but there are a lot of things that are in our control. I am 39. I'm 39 and a half. I think, yeah. So excited to be in my 40s. Loved my 30s. But with regards to maintaining, I think it's with regards to what we've talked about a lot on this podcast and on the blog. It's moderation. It's knowledge of the type of food you're eating and what it does to your body. Eating real food, not eating processed food, so that your brain can feel that it's full, and then you become satiated and you don't overeat. I think understanding the addictive properties of different things such as sugar, and where we find sugar in the most odd places that you maybe wouldn't expect. And just so knowing what you're eating, eating as raw and real and whole as you possibly can, and enjoying the process of the seasons. And we'll talk about that in another question. But I think that's the key. I use this concept of a tripod for good health. And we talked about this a little bit in episode 212. But with regards to the physical and the weight aspect, you want to make sure that you include a regular fitness regimen, which we've talked about many times on this podcast, as well as eating well, and then also just exercising your mind, having that discipline. I think that's important. But with regards to the physical, I work out I don't even really think about it as working out, to be honest with you, anymore, because it's something that just makes me feel good. But I walk 4 to 5 times a week. I do yoga once a week. I do strength training 1 to 2 times, depending on if I've done my yoga, because sometimes I count my yoga, depending on the severity of the class. I count my yoga as my strength session, and my schedule sometimes dictates that too. And with regards to my mental strength, as you guys know, I've been trying to do my daily meditations every morning. And this last year was the first year that I did that every single morning. And it was like a big obstacle for me to do. And I'm so excited because now it's just ingrained in me. But it's taken years to do that. And that's something that I'm still working on. But I think while you may think, the mental part with our eating, how does that compute? Well, it does. Because why do we eat? Sometimes we don't eat because we're hungry. Sometimes we eat because we're tired and we need to get some sleep and we need to rearrange our schedules. And if we're not getting enough sleep, we are going to eat more food. If we're not getting the right food, we're going to wake up in the middle of the night and we're going to eat whatever our hands can find in the refrigerator as we're half asleep. Been there, done that. That's always a sign to me now. It's like, okay, Shannon, what do you need to tweak in your schedule so that you're getting more sleep and you're also eating well to satiate and fulfill your body's needs. So with regards to maintaining my weight as my age, I think it is paying attention to your body because our body shifts and whatnot. But I think also is that if we incorporate a strength routine and we incorporate regular physical exercise that does challenge us, we'll be amazed at what our bodies can do as we age and not be limited by the assumptions of previous individuals or cultures or generations, because everybody does respond differently. And we have so much more knowledge now about how to live well with regards to our health. So I hope that helps. I know it's very general to some respects, but if you're wanting more specific posts on food and diet and exercise, when I say diet, I do not mean deprivation. I mean the definition of diet, what you eat on a daily and regular basis. Check out the archives under health. I have a bunch of posts on that as well. And in the podcast section, just search categories health, and you'll find a bunch of those topics, and they are discussed in detail. The third question comes from Kim, and it's short and sweet. She just asks, I'm very curious about your beauty routine. Now, I am happy to share this. It's always been adjusted as I try to pay close attention to my skin. I've detailed this in a few posts, and I'll include links to that in today's show notes and my favorite beauty products. But I live in a very dry climate, and so I've had to adjust to that in the last few years. But my daily routine, I now use, as I shared in November, micellar water to cleanse and prepare my face in the evening and the morning. I don't wash with any kind of soap anymore. I just use micellar water. It's very inexpensive. It's inspired. It began in France, and in fact, I detailed all the history on this particular product. There's a bunch of different brands that use it now or make it available. You also can buy travel micellar face wipes, so you don't have to carry the liquid with you, which is what I do when I travel. So I do that. I use a cotton ball and clean my face and my décolletage. And then I apply facial oil. I love facial oil, especially, as I said, because I live in a dry climate. My face just drinks it up, and it just helps my skin glow. I put this on day and night, so before I go to work or start the day or before I go to bed. And I've been going back and forth between a lot of different facial oils to try them out. But I keep coming back to Rodin. And it is one item that just is rich and nourishing. And as I said, I think it's partially because of my uber dry climate that I love it. But there are many other facial oils out there. Some people prefer serums, which are very similar, but the facial oil is what I love. Then I apply my moisturizing cream. I use Claude Lally as well as La Mer. I go back and forth between those two. And then I apply my eye cream from La Roche-Posay, which is a wonderful brand for sunscreen as well. So if I'm going out for the day outside, I put that on to finish it up. And that is what I do on a daily basis, morning and night. The masks I do a couple days a week are from Eminence. So I still have a scrub that I use, and I share that on my list of beauty products. And I also will go for a facial at a spa every season. I used to go every month. I've tightened my budget a little bit and I don't go every month, but I still go seasonally. And I actually go for a microdermabrasion, and I have just seen wonders with my skin as it just truly exfoliates and removes the dead skin cells, and my face just glows afterwards and just gets a reboot. So I do that every 3 months. Beyond that, though, I think what we eat makes a big difference in our beauty routine. So a lot of water, reducing the alcohol. You know I love wine, but I really don't drink that much unless it's a special occasion. But even then, savor it, sip it, and pair it with food. Always pairing that with food. But I do try to get as much water in as possible and really watch the balance of nutrition that I take in as well, because we can often see what we need if we look in the mirror, or feel what we need based on how our skin feels. And I think that's a telltale sign. So I hope that helps. That answers the question, Kim. Thank you for sending that to me. All right, our next topic is about relationships. And I love this question, and I appreciate your honesty and forthrightness, Caroline, for asking it. Here it is. What are your personal indicators that a long-term relationship you're in is the right one, or at least going in the right direction? In your 20s. I'm 26 and have been in a committed relationship for 3.5 years. This is my first long-term relationship, and I love my partner dearly. But for the past 6 or 7 months, I felt a certain restlessness and craving for excitement that I am not sure how to handle. I would so appreciate any wisdom you have on this subject, as I'm hesitant to talk to too many close friends about this. Many are mutual close friends. All my best, Caroline. Now, first of all, your heart and what restlessness means to you will be unique to you. How you quench that restlessness is going to also be unique to you. I would explore what it is you're restless about. What is it that you want to explore that you haven't been able to? And whether or not you can do that with a partner or not. And maybe the restlessness isn't about anything particular, but it's just wanting to be on your own. And if that's the case, trust that intuition, explore it. A lot of the times, relationships don't end because the people aren't right for each other. It's a lot about timing. And it doesn't, and I don't want to say this to give you hope as far as, oh, well, you can end the relationship and then you'll get back together, guaranteed. I won't ever say that. But I will say, extend the respect you wish to receive. It doesn't guarantee anything down the road, but how we treat each other is an expression of our love for one another. It's not always easy to make this decision to leave or to stay and compromise, but you're 26 years old. So I'm going to take that and give advice for a 26 or in their mid-20s individual. And my experience is that having gone through 3 serious relationships in my 20s, they were fantastic individuals. For me, the timing wasn't right. And I guess in hindsight, it was probably restlessness. I've never used the word to describe it that way, but it was me wanting to continue to explore. And I knew I had to do it on my own. And it wasn't fair to them. It was my goal, and I can only speak for myself, to treat them and our time together with great respect. Not all relationships are meant to last forever, but every relationship is different. Have this conversation with your partner. Tell them what you're feeling, restlessness. Maybe they're feeling it too, or maybe they observed it. If you are in a relationship, you've been with them for quite a while, they're probably very aware of how you're feeling and maybe could even offer you some help and guidance if they too want the best for you as you want the best for them. So, while obviously I'm not giving you an answer, this is your decision to make. I think it's important for you to truly examine what you want and not feel bad about wanting to go explore. And if you need to do it on your own, do it. you are in your 20s. You have so much time. And even if you're not in your 20s, I mean, it depends on everything, all the other details, but truly, part of living well is listening to yourself and respectfully moving forward. That respect needs to be extended to yourself as well as other people. So, Caroline, I hope that helped. Thank you so much for your question. The next question, when it comes to relationships, is about eating out. Here we go. This is from Regan. My question for you is one that has been troubling me for years. How do I split the tab at lunch or dinner with a friend with class? I've always found the situation awkward and immediately offer to foot the bill, even if it wasn't in my budget. Oh my gosh, Regan, I've been there. And I also know many other people have been there too. So completely relatable situation, probably for so many listeners. First of all, depends on the relationship with the person. And it depends on the restaurant. There's so many different apps out there right now that you could use Venmo, you could use Apple Pay. I mean, I'm only listing two, but I know there are more where you could, one person pays and then you automatically send them your portion of the check. That's one option. You could also, hey, you picked up the bill, but maybe they pay the tip. And then if you're going to see them again, you could flip it. This is not something I don't think there's one foolproof way. Because every situation is different. Every point in our life is different when we sit down with regards to our budget. And we don't know the other person's situation, nor do we need to know. It's their business, not ours. If you want to make sure that you can take care of it because it's a gift or a treat, then I would talk to the server before you get there. And I would tell them just that. I'll be taking care of the check. Here's my card. Or however you want to handle that. If you just want to make sure it's split down the middle, come with cash. I think that is probably the best way to make sure that you pay for your portion so that when that check comes, you can say, oh, here is mine plus a tip from what I paid for. That might instigate everyone else to say, oh, well, that's what we'll do. I know this isn't the perfect answer, but maybe come in with a few other ideas based on what you can do. I think if your budget is such that you can only afford so much and you're going to be very careful with regards to what you buy and what you order, then come with cash. If you are worried about this being an issue. If you're not, then just give that your card along with everyone else's and say, here's for my portion, and ask the server to split the check. But again, a lot of places, while they're very accommodating, if you don't want to bother the server, you can always do the mobile apps, Venmo and whatnot, and pay each other back via those apps. All right, I hope that helps somewhat. Again, if anyone does have a perfect solution, please let me know. But that is kind of where I've been on it. And sometimes it just depends on the people, and you get used to a rhythm. Maybe that's something to be paying attention to. What's our rhythm? And if you're always the one who's grabbing the check and they're never grabbing the check, that's a whole nother conversation to have, I think. All right, my next two questions are similar. They have to do with revamping or reinvention, and I'll read them both, but then I'll answer them together. Hello, Shannon. I am now in my mid-50s and spent the last 10 years as a stay-at-home mom. I focus on everyone else and not myself. I have come to realize that and need a total revamp of me and my life. My look is frumpy and dated. I am out of shape, and even my marriage is in a slump. Where do I start? Where would you start? This is from Jackie. And then Rita has a similar question. She says, what tips or advice do you have for someone who wants to reinvent their life? This is a big question. And I, first of all, want to say, hey, you've recognized that you want to change something. That is a big step. That is the first step, but it's the most important step. And the next step, you want to have all the answers as to what exactly you should do. And this is something that's frustrating because if you're trying to make a big change, it's going to take time, and it's actually going to involve a lot of small steps, consistency. And I would argue that you need to just take a few things that you want to change. So from Jackie's list, what do you want to change first? Your look, your health, your relationship. Maybe choose one little thing you can do in all three. Or maybe you just want to focus on one of those three things and dive in. But we don't want to overwhelm ourselves. And I think that's something to consider before you dive in. The other part of it is ask for support with regards to your marriage. Even if you are working on yourself with regards to your health and how you feel about how you look and present yourself, ask for support not only from your husband or your partner, but from your friends and your family and your children. So that's something to keep in mind too. Have this conversation with your children and even your husband, I would argue, because you want them to understand why you're going through this, but also so they can learn from what you're going through and understand that balance is important. And so that they maybe won't, I'm not saying these are mistakes, but they will understand that it's possible to have this balance to some degree. It's always fluid, it's always moving, and that it's okay to take care of yourself along the way. And I think you are aware of that. I see that with regards to what you've shared. You're aware of, maybe I should have been doing this earlier, but we can't go back. So we're going to go forward. So there are a lot of different posts, and I'll include a few on the show notes with regards to making the changes that you would like to make in your life. But with regards to both the questions, I'm so excited because one entire chapter in the new book, Living the Simply Luxurious Life, is dedicated to making a fresh start. Whether it's physically moving to another location and how to set your life up and integrate yourself, or just simply right where you are, how to do a complete reinvention, how to figure out what the best course of action is for you. And in fact, I go through that detail by detail on how I made the decision to do what I did. And I do feel very good about the decision with regards to where I moved to, but I wasn't sure about it for quite a while. And I think that's the part here too, before you dive in head first, is what do I really want? And why do I want it? You talk about how you look, but with regards to, is it about what you look like or what you feel like? Do you want to feel healthy and strong? Because I think when we focus on something deeper, the exterior falls in line and then we get a twofer. Same thing with regards to relationship with your husband. Work on you, because you can't change someone else, but maybe you can change how you communicate, how you spend time together. And that starts with you and your mindset and what you talk about, your attitude, your boundaries. Yes, no, I can do this, I can't do this, and this is why. And when you start creating that self-respect, others start responding to it, and it's their choice to change or initiate a conversation as to ask why, but we can only control ourselves. So hopefully that's some help to get started. Again, I'll put some posts on today's show notes to really dive deep into how to create the change we desire. All right, we still have so many more questions to answer, but before we get to them, I'd like to introduce you to a sponsor of today's podcast. The Simple Sophisticate is sponsored this week by Casper Mattresses. As someone who protects my 8 hours of sleep each night as absolutely necessary for a productive next day, the mattress we sleep on each night is an important decision as well. The original Casper mattress combines multiple supportive memory foams for a quality sleep surface with the right amounts of both sink and bounce. Its breathable design helps you sleep cool and regulates your body temperature throughout the night. With over 20,000 reviews and an average of 4.8 stars across Casper, Amazon, and Google, Casper is becoming the internet's favorite mattress, and all of Casper mattresses are designed, developed, and assembled in the U.S. Available at affordable prices because Casper cuts out the middleman and sells directly to you. Your mattress will be delivered right to your door in a small, how do they do that, sized box. Enjoy free shipping and returns in the U.S. and Canada. As listeners of the Simple Sophisticate podcast, you will receive $50 towards select mattresses by visiting casper.com/SS and entering the promo code SS. Note this offer is only applicable to select mattress purchases and terms and conditions apply. You can be sure of your purchase with Casper's 100-night risk-free Sleep On It trial. Visit casper.com/SS and enter the promo code SS. My next question has to do with work, and it's from Blair. Question is, I am a newer listener and so excited to find a blog and podcast that I can listen to and know others are living the same way I am. My question is, Have you ever had a friendship with a coworker turn sour? I don't have to see her more than once a week, but just even knowing I am going to see her fills me with anxiety. She hurt me, and now having to go from friends back to coworkers felt like an unnatural and awkward switch. I am trying to carry myself professionally, but it still bothers me, and I still cannot seem to get over it. Well wishes, Blair. Blair, this is a great question, and it is a difficult situation. Clearly, your feelings were hurt, something happened, and you want to honor that. And it sounds like you're setting those boundaries to do that. That would be my first tip would be to be very clear about your boundaries. Hopefully you guys understand why you both understand why there's a divide. If you haven't had that conversation to some regard, I would make sure you do that. But it sounds like you have. It sounds like it's very clear. So I'm moving forward from that. You do have to work in the same environment. You only have to see her once a week. You stated it. I am carrying myself professionally. Boom, that's the first thing. Just do what you would do with any other colleague. You're not going to share too much. You're going to get the job done as promised. You're going to say what you can do, what you can't do very clearly, and you follow through. It has nothing to do with her. It's all about maintaining your integrity at work. Keep doing that. Keep focused. Another thing to do is working with other colleagues, strengthen those relationships. I think that's important. Keep this kind of information, whatever it is, sounds like it's a personal situation, out of work. You don't want it to be gossip. You want to maintain your professionalism. Regardless of what they are doing, you maintain your professionalism. All right. The next thing, it's not about forgetting. I don't think we forget these kind of things, and nor should we. But we do need to move on for our sake, our peace of mind, and how to do that, depending on what your mental health regimen is. Maybe you are religious, maybe you're spiritual, maybe you simply meditate. Whatever you do to pass forgiveness on, find a way to do that. Maybe you're going to journal it out. Maybe you're going to talk to a counselor about it. I think find a way to make sure that you are heard as to why you are hurt, not necessarily for her to know why you've been hurt. Once you've already had that conversation, they may never truly understand or see it from your perspective, but for you to make sure that you know why, and you can address those wounds in yourself and care for yourself, but then also to let it go. Let this thing go so you can move forward and not be hindered by it anymore. There's a simple mantra that Dan Harris shares in his book, 10% Happier, and he talks about meditation throughout this entire book. And his final mantra when he wraps up his meditation sessions is, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be safe, may your life be filled with peace. And he says that he has himself say this not only to other people that are in his life, whether it's personal relationships that he loves and adores, or himself. He wants to say this to himself as well, but also to those people that you're just talking about right here, to try to wish them well so that you can move on. They'll never hear you say the mantra, but in your head, you want to wish them well so that you can move forward. And that's just a small mental exercise that you could do. Again, you may want to talk to someone else with regards to expertise in this topic, but that's a way to slowly but steadily heal what is an uncomfortable situation at work. Again, stay professional, keep your head up, and be clear about your boundaries. Continue to do that. I think it sounds like you were, and I'm sorry that you were hurt. But in time, things pass as long as we heal the wound. And I think that addressing it with regards to yourself is important, as well as forgiving, but not forgetting necessarily, but forgiving and moving forward. All right. Our next question is in the category of living. And this has to do with eco-friendly living from Kelly from Glendale, California. She asks, I want to hear your thoughts on eco-friendly living. It seems like the green lifestyle closely aligns with what you value, including buying food in season, minimizing your wardrobe, and getting in touch with nature. You even touched on lessening your carbon footprint in your blog post on January 31st regarding food. But what about using less plastic, using vegan beauty products, or only shopping at environmentally responsible brands? Please share your thoughts on the subject. I'm curious if this is something you consciously pursue. Great question. I'll be honest, I am not a die-hard eco-friendly individual. However, I'm continually learning how to live in such a way to be more respectful and thoughtful about my life here on this earth. I can only control myself, but my actions are something that I know I want to be mindful of. So with regards to eating in season, buying as locally as possible, trying to use less plastic, I think that is something that all of us could do and be more thoughtful about. I'm by no means anywhere near an expert on this topic. But I think when we do live more thoughtfully, when we do live more consciously, we have the opportunity to become more aware of our actions, our purchases that affect the planet either positively or negatively. And so hopefully in the coming months, I won't say anytime soon, but I'd like to examine this further. And so this is a great question. Trying to be a smart shopper with regards to only purchasing what we truly need and reusing what we can, things along those lines. So Kelly, great question. And I look forward again to learning even more in the future and passing along what I learn. All right, here's the next question in the living section. How do you keep on top of cleaning in your home? Do you follow a cleaning schedule, hire help, etc.? I am trying to balance living well every day, and part of that entails keeping my house in order. I completely agree with you. Part of living well does include maintaining order in our homes. Our homes, I believe, are a place of sanctuary and have a vital influence over our peace of mind. And so when our homes are in order, then we can then relax and decompress. So I clean my house once a week, usually Saturday mornings. It used to be Friday afternoons, depends on my schedule. It's a very quick 30, 40 minutes. I only have a 1,000 square foot house, or just over 1,000 square foot house. So it's very simple and short and easy. I do deep cleaning a couple times a year with regards to windows and the fridge and the stove, and spring cleaning, different things that you only do a few times a year. But I need to do it. I don't enjoy it necessarily, but I try to simplify it to such a point where I can get it done in 30, 40 minutes. Why is that possible? I try to pick up every night before I go to bed. I try to get the dishwasher going if I need to every night so that when I wake up, a fresh start, the dishwasher is clean, the dishes are ready to go. I try to make sure that the floor and the counters, everything has been put away. So when I wake up and start the day, there's a freshness to it. Have I hired help in the past? I did. Before I moved to Bend, I could afford it. I cannot afford it now. I would love to. And this person or these individuals came every 2 weeks actually, and then just gave the house a very deep clean. To be honest, I would love to be able to afford that again because when I wake up on Saturday, I want to just dive into the weekend. But I can't do that right now. And I think we go through different stages in our lives and our budgets because we're following different dreams where we make sacrifices. And that has been a sacrifice that I can definitely take care of myself. All right, Lizette, you also asked a question about my house hunting. How is that going? At present, we know you are renting, but I was wondering if you were looking for something specific with the next home purchase. Well, great question. And this is a conversation I have a lot, quite often, as my family and friends know. I am eager to become a homeowner again. I have owned houses in the past, as you guys know. I am renting here in Bend because it is expensive. The average home price in Bend, the average topped $400,000 last month. So that's the average. And it's just over that. It's 407, I want to say. which is up 7% in 1 year. Now, to be fair, across the country, prices are going up too. The median house price in our country is $312,000, with the average being $407,000 across the country. So housing prices are up because inventory is low. I want to make a smart home purchase. Renting is what I can do right now. I've been spending a lot of time investing in my business, my blog, and my second book. And so I am looking. I would love, as you guys probably already know from all the decor inspiration posts, simply to have a small cottage home. So someday I look forward to talking and sharing pictures of that home when it does eventually happen. So hopefully that answered your question, Lizette. All right, the next question is from Hushna. This is a great question. She writes, I would be most grateful if you could inject some wise words to my dilemma. I try hard to establish some practices to enjoy a simply luxurious life. However, with being up at 6:30 a.m. to get ready for work, having an intense day at work, and being back at home anytime between 6:30 and 7, I must admit that it is not easy. On top of work, I somehow manage to find time to cook dinner from scratch, do the cleaning, washing, ironing, grocery shopping, gardening, etc. Most nights, I don't sit down on the couch until 9 p.m.-ish with a cup of tea, by which time I am pretty shattered, and it's time for bed. I wonder how people with kids cope. Any advice would be most welcome. Well, I don't have the details of what you do for a living, but I will say when I got your email, I smiled and I sympathize with you, but it is possible. I think part of what we do in our daily lives is things that we think we have to do. When really, if we look closely, there are tasks, there are attitudes, there are health choices that we make that can be tweaked to improve the quality of our lives. There are things we can edit out, say no to, so that we have more time, so more cushion, things like that. And so it really takes truly an examination of what's working, what's not, what you need financially, mentally. What do you truly need? Be honest with yourself. That is not an easy conversation to have, and it may not be something that you will have right away. From my own experience, I wake up at 5 o'clock every day. I love what I get to do each day. It does exhaust me at times. The end of the school year, I am drained. My kids have taken their AP test in May. And at that point, I am ready for a break because we've been pushing so hard all year. And at the same time, as you know, I'm still working on the blog. But I could not imagine not coming home and writing a blog post. In many ways, writing, exploring, sharing with you is a release for me. It's truly something I enjoy. I don't think about it as a job in so many ways. I know it is in some regard, but in so many other ways it's not. So examine what's working. Examine what you can tweak and change. Sometimes we do have to go through periods where we do things we don't want to do. Been there, done that, and we'll probably be doing that in different ways again in the future as I try to grow as well. So I don't want to say, oh, if I don't like it, then I need to toss it. All of us have to go through those stages where we have to do things we don't want in order to get where we do want to go. I don't have kids, so I can't answer the question, how do people do it with kids? Some people have partners that share the work equally. Some people don't, and they do an amazing job of their own. Maybe they have their own community that helps them. Everyone's family life and how they do it is going to be different. But you are doing this by yourself, and you can do it. If I can do it, you know you can do it. And I'll share a few posts from the archives that may be helpful in figuring out the editing and trying to figure out what and how to determine what you should let go and what you can keep and improve. Oh, and one other detail I want to add, I would add also try to find time and things regularly that recharge you. And when you do that, it's amazing how much more fuel you have for that busy schedule. But that also comes with that structure of saying yes and no, and I have to, and I can't anymore. Thank you, but I can't do that. So that's something to incorporate. And I truly feel that this blog and podcast is dedicated to helping you do exactly what you're trying to do. And so I'll post a few archived posts that you will enjoy or hopefully get something out of to help you with that. The next question has to do with planning the week. This is from Sarah. Hi, Shannon. Hope you and the boys are well. Thank you, Sarah. The boys are doing great. My question for your Ask Shannon episode is, how do you go about planning your week so that you accomplish all your tasks and chores, as well as incorporating your downtime and petite plaisirs? Love your blog, podcast, and book. Sarah. Well, I do every Sunday, and I've shared a post on this exact thing. I will include that in the show notes. But one thing I do is every Sunday before the week begins, I sit down and I look at the week ahead and I say, can I do this? And I look at the appointments that I have. I do have certain days that I never schedule appointments. And so there are certain things that, oh, nope, that can never happen on that day because I have to get this particular post done, or I know my brain's going to be exhausted. So that type of activity is probably not a good idea for me that night. So it's a matter of getting to know yourself and knowing what you can handle, and still do well and thrive and enjoy yourself. So I do sit down every Sunday and examine that. I do edit throughout the week. If I can't make it, if I can't do something, I call people up as soon as I possibly can and I say I can't do this. But it's about what's important, what's a priority, what are the ones that I'm going to protect with my absolute might, and which ones are like, well, I can reschedule that. That eyebrow wax, I can wait another week on that. So let's reschedule that so that I don't become too overwhelmed with scheduling. Now, when it comes to my blog work, I have a very specific schedule of what I need to do and when it needs to be done. And so I've been sticking to that for a couple of years now, more than that. I always tweak it, but there's a very clear expectation of what has to be done. And I think communicating that to others in our lives so they can respect that takes some of the stress and pressure off of us as well. Because when they come to understand, okay, she's got to work on this, so I can honor that and I'll work on something else, or we can schedule for another day, that makes a big difference. So I think the petite plaisirs come in because they are petite. It truly is that evening tea with a truffle signaling to your mind to stop, slow down, you're done for the day. It's that weekend yoga session or Pilates section, or that walk with your girlfriend or your partner on Sunday mornings, and leaving your phones in the office at home and not looking at them for a certain duration of day. So setting those boundaries. Boundaries make a big difference in how we go about our days and our weeks, and therefore ultimately create a life that is enjoyable, that we want to live. So I hope that answers your question. All right, the next section is about handling a mistake or a decision. Well, let me just read the question. This comes from Arianda, and she's from Lithuania, and she writes, Dear Shannon, I'd like to ask you, how do you stay positive, especially when you realize that the decision you made was wrong? Well, everything's relative, and this is a very general question. But when I immediately read this, I thought to myself, change your decision. Do something different. But then I also think it's important because I sincerely believe, based on my own experience, that even from our negative experiences, even when we make a mistake, there is something to learn. There is a good outcome, whether it's felt in that moment or it's going to be applied so that a better moment can happen down the road. So before you move on from the mistake, I would examine, what can I learn from this? What was the good that came out of this? And then maybe journal about it, maybe talk it out, figure it out on your own. Then start going about the business of making the change that's necessary so that you can move forward and you can move on. I hope that answers your question, because I really think it's quite simple. It doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but I think it is as simple as there's always something good to learn, but we can always decide to change and move forward. It may be uncomfortable in the moment, but if we know that that's not going to work for us, we need to honor that and step forward in a manner that's tactful and respectful, but still move forward. All right, moving on to food. Caitlin has a great question as well. Dear Shannon, My question, as an avid cook and adventurous eater, what blogs, cookbooks, etc. would you recommend for creating recipes or a capsule menu night menu for one, especially as we move into summer with access to fresh fruit and vegetables? I love working from cookbooks, but often serving sizes range from 4 to 8. Too many for just one reader. Thank you, Caitlin from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Great question. Been eating alone most of my life. So everything that I talk about or do is from that perspective. And you're right. So many cookbooks offer 4 to 8 serving sizes, but unless it's a baking recipe, and even then you can size it down. You just have to be careful. You can absolutely have or quarter these recipes. And I like to cook for more than one person, even though it's just me, because then I have it for leftovers for lunch the next day or even dinner the next day, because I get tired. And I know that I talk about how much I love cooking, because I do, but I also have so many projects and things that I'm doing that I love that sometimes by the end of the day, I don't have all that energy, and I do want to have a delicious meal, and I want it to be healthy, and I want it to be something that serves me well. So making that dish that serves 2 to 3 is a great way to save yourself time the next day, or also make sure your lunch is made for the next day at work and save you some money there. Now, I've been enjoying different YouTube channels. I've been sharing a few of them on the Fridays This and That from time to time. Cooking with Babish, for example, is a great YouTube channel. French guy who cooks, which I shared a few weeks ago when he took everyone through his day, his favorite restaurants that he likes to go through in Paris. He's coming out with a new cookbook in the fall. But there's one great cookbook that it's from Judith Jones, who is Julia Child's editor, Cooking for One. It's a great resource of a book. I have it. I highly recommend it because she was cooking for one at the end of her life, and she's a great cook, and she loves to cook. And so I recommend you picking up that cookbook. Now, the funny thing is that the upcoming vodcast of the Simply Luxurious Kitchen, I'm going to be focusing on, yes, I am going to be offering recipes. I have recipes in the blog, but I want people to feel more comfortable in the kitchen without a recipe. And what I mean by that is, okay, so you picked up some chicken at the grocery store, and as you went to the farmer's market, you saw some seasonal vegetables. What are you going to do with that when you get home? And so it's less about the recipe, but just instead knowing how to season and flavor very well, and also knowing that as long as you have a certain kind of protein, a certain kind of vegetable, you can do the same kind of tips and tricks and techniques, such as roasting or steaming or braising. You can do a lot of these different things that change the same ingredients you have in your refrigerator. So I would encourage you to start playing around with things that catch your eye at the market, take them home, try them out. I would also encourage you to try different methods of cooking. So as I just said, figure out how to roast vegetables so that when different vegetables come into season, you're doing the same thing, roasting 30 to 40 minutes at 375 to 400 degrees, olive oil, salt and pepper, toss, put it in the oven. You're done. You have your side. It doesn't matter what the vegetable is. As long as you've cut them up in the same size, they're going to roast and they're going to be delicious. So that would be my encouragement there. And we'll talk more about it in the vodcast starting in September. The first episode will air on September 8th. I'm going to be learning some new tricks and tips this summer in cooking. And I look forward to coming back to the vodcast and sharing them with you guys. All right. The next question is about the French language. And these two questions I'm going to read to you are very similar. So I'll read them both and answer them together. This first one comes from Marty. Hi, Shannon. I'd like to learn French and also Italian. I have never studied a foreign language before. There are several language packages like Rosetta Stone, Pimsleur, etc., along with academic classes. I've looked at reviews for some of the language packages, but really can't decide which one to use and if I should go that route or try to take an academic course. In your experiences learning French, what would you recommend? Okay, so I've done Rosetta Stone. I've taken the academic classes. I've done some of the different apps, so Babbel and Duolingo, and travel to France as well. I've shared a few posts in the archives with regards to my experiences and what I would do. I, as you know, though, am not fluent in French. What I found to be the most helpful is repetition. And aside from living in France or a country that speaks French, I think for me, and everyone's a different learner, the academic courses taught me so that I could understand what I was learning. I'm a visual learner. And so language, especially now, is easier for me if I have someone talking to me, showing me, clarifying things for me. Now, I know that's not the case for everybody. And you do want to have a good instructor. That makes a big difference too. But I think the repetition of going to class 3 or 4 times a week and seeing the same professor and being tested on it, so you have to force yourself to memorize at a particular point in time, is powerful. Now, again, how they teach makes a difference. But for me, that helped a lot. And it helped me work through all the different verb tenses. And I by no means was taught all of them. I was only in French 1, 2, and 3. But it helped me build that foundation. And I think a lot of different programs start in a lot of different places when it comes to building that foundation. Rosetta Stone is great for memorizing the basics, the numbers, colors, basic nouns, and similar basic phrasing. That was great for that. And so the same thing is for Duolingo. It's a free French app you can look at on your phone or your iPad whenever you're traveling around or have a moment, and it's great review of certain things with regards to vocab and basic sentence structure. There are also other ways you can communicate with people so that you're having a conversation. And if that's the route you want to go, I'll share a few links of those. I've never used those before, but I have some recommendations that I can put on the blog and the show notes, and you can check out and see if that might be something you want to work with. So again, everyone's route to language proficiency or improvement will be different. Depends on your temperament and what you're most comfortable doing with regards to learning styles. But I think the key is repetition and developing and understanding the foundations of that language. So with regards to French and Italian, if you understand verb conjugations, if you understand subject-verb agreement, those kind of details, those aren't going to change except for what the word is and how it's spelled and how it's pronounced. So knowing those rules will make a difference. So again, just my 2 cents, and I hope that helps. And I forgot the second question, and I'll answer this one directly since I forgot. This question is from Jennifer from Lexington, Kentucky, and she says, I'd love if you would share your journey in learning the French language. I am also trying to learn French and always enjoy hearing what has worked and what hasn't from my fellow French language learners. How many years have you been studying? What is your study schedule? Do you take classes? Do you have any tips or favorite resources that you'd recommend? So I've already shared a few of those favorite resources and what I would recommend for learning. I took my first French language class back in college, and it was for 1 quarter just so that I could meet the prerequisite to study abroad. I was so determined to get to France, even though all I had taken was Spanish. And so I did take that 1 quarter of French, and I did go to Angers, and I studied abroad for a quarter in the summer. Since then, I didn't take a lot of French classes. Life had different plans. I returned to the French language at the end of my 20s, and I've taken 2 courses at the community college over the past 2.5 years, and traveled to France 3 times. This next trip will be my 4th time. But what I try to do now is I try to watch more French movies. That's always a great and fun way to learn the language, and try to not read the subtitles as much as possible. I do follow different people on Instagram. I try to listen to French news. There are some great reading in slow French, news in slow French, different ways you can incorporate those daily routines you would do in your native language, but then shifting what the language is so you're not taking up as much time, but you're hearing these words again and again and again. Because I truly believe that repetition is the key to learning these fundamentals. So we go to these things by default. I've even tried speaking to my dogs in French regularly. I mean, that's a blast because my dogs, they're multilingual, right? Because they can understand my language, which is Shannon language, which I have my own weird words for them sometimes with regards to their nicknames. And let's do this. And anyway, I make up all sorts of weird words. But really, it's the tone they're responding to more than anything. But I think the key is just making it part of your default process, putting it into your daily language. There's a great book called Flirting with French, and I've listed a bunch of these books on the French Inspired post that's under French Inspired on the menu. I have a bunch of my posts that I've written about how I've addressed and tried to learn this language. But Flirting with French shared a lot of different ways that he learned or attempted to learn the French language, all the way from sticking Post-its on everything throughout the house that has the French equivalent word of it, to learning with his daughter, to traveling to different places in France and going to an immersion school, basically, but for adults. It's a fun book to read, and you will get ideas. I also, this is one I should have shared in my last question, Coffee Break French. The app is a great resource for repetition and learning the basics. That would be one of my most recommended apps to listen to, Coffee Break French. Again, this is all in the posts that I've written about underneath the French-inspired blog posts. All right, moving on to reading. This will be one about magazines. Is from Angelica. She writes, "Hi, Shannon. I'm curious as to what magazines you subscribe to and how do you go about subscribing to them? I don't have any magazine subscriptions at the moment, and I was thinking of going to a store and choosing a few, then signing up individually. Or is there a better way to do this, such as an online site?" Online site, I manage all my subscriptions through Amazon. It's all in one place. It's very simple. You can gain access to all the subscriptions there and then manage them as far as when to pay them, if you want to put on auto renewal, whatnot. Without going into a list of all the magazines I follow, if you go to the menu on the homepage and you go to the Simply Luxurious Life shop, the drop-down menu has a page titled Magazines. Click on that. It'll take you to all the magazines that I have read, do read, enjoy, and recommend. So you get a bunch of ideas there, Angelica. So I hope you find something that you love. All right. We have a question about family. This is from Krista, and she writes, "Hi, Shannon. I'm a mom to 5 kiddos, which I have homeschooled up to this year. Next year, they will be going to public school for the first time. So my question is about my 12-year-old daughter, who is mature in physical stature, but just not interested so much in her physical appearance. She'll be going into 7th grade. I think you are a teacher of upper grades and are around many kids of these age groups. I am wondering, given your background in teaching and blog subjects, what advice would you give to young ladies about their appearance? How would you modify your fashion guidelines to suit teens?" Krista, great question. And in fact, this year at our school, we had a good discussion about dress code and whether or not it was biased to one sex or the other. And I'm including a link to an article that was shared in The Atlantic about how dress codes can basically reinforce the objectification of women, because they tend to be the targets of the dress code more so than boys. And I only share that because we want to be thoughtful in how we talk about what one should or shouldn't wear, especially at a young age. But again, every age is going to require a different conversation. And you know what type of conversation you want to have with your daughter. I think the key thing is to not focus. And this is going to sound ironic, but don't focus on the clothing. She's not focused on it. That's awesome, to be honest. What is she focused on? What's she passionate about? Get excited about that with her. And then encourage her simply to wear what she feels comfortable in. Boy or girl, wear what you feel comfortable in. And I think there's at least some more awareness around this reality, and hopefully it starts to shift for the sake of boys and girls. But we have a culture that focuses solely on appearance, heavily on appearance. But what we want to do is have a conversation of what is below the surface. Who are you? And to engage that part of ourselves and of individuals and children, and to let them know that we are more than what we look like. And so I think it's not a one-layered conversation. And I always applaud, and I don't usually do this directly because I don't want because I may not have that conversation with the student, but I always applaud any student who is able to be who they truly find themselves to be in that moment. And we know that teenagers, especially preteens, are growing and changing and learning all sorts of things. But if they can find a way to express themselves, whether it's through the extracurriculars that they do, the curiosity, where their curiosity takes them, sometimes it's through their clothing, but then go deeper. Well, what inspired you to wear that? Did you see someone who was wearing that, and what were they doing that made you want to emulate that? Have those conversations. I think this could be an entire podcast episode, to be honest. But I think it's vitally important that we take off the emphasis of only what girls are wearing and stop penalizing them for wearing something because it tantalizes someone else. That in itself is saying that we are at fault, and that can't be true, because ultimately I don't think anyone wants to come to school in a bikini, and I could be wrong about that. I don't think any guy wants to come to school in something that's uber revealing either. You want to wear something that's comfortable and that exudes who you are. But if you know you're going to get attention for wearing something that people agree with or disagree with, maybe you're getting attention that way, then that's a way of someone trying to communicate. And I think that's the thing we have to ask ourselves. We need to give everyone other means to communicate who they are. So, as I said, what is it that your daughter is passionate about? Have that conversation. And then, hey, she just wants to wear jeans and a t-shirt to school. Wahoo! I think if we could get past just what kids are wearing and more about what they're trying to understand about themselves and give them inspiration and give them ideas, I think that would be far more helpful to them. No. Anyway, probably not a specific answer, but that you're looking for, but hopefully it opens up the conversation, and I think that's what it looks like you're trying to have, and I hope it goes very well. All right, so we have a miscellaneous question that is about the podcast. So this question comes from Anna in Virginia, and she writes, "Hi, Shannon. I only discovered your podcast a few months ago, and I have been in love. I don't know if perhaps this question is addressed in the earlier episode. I plan to listen to them all in time, but as a jazz musician, I've been wondering who wrote, performed your theme music, and what was the creative process? Thank you so much for your work and all your loveliness." Well, the good news is it's easy to find. Simply go to Podcast, a Simple Sophisticate on the menu bar, and you'll find the link to the music. And the music is called Walking in Paris, and you can find a link and all the information on that page. So I hope that's helpful. All right, last question. Molly asked that I share an excerpt from the book, Living the Simply Luxurious Life, Making Your Everydays Extraordinary and Discovering Your Best Self. So I'm going to do just that. So the book will come out November 13th of this year, and pre-ordering began last Wednesday. You can get a signed copy with a simple luxury and an exclusive discount on the first book. If you haven't read the first book, 40% off the first book when you order a signed copy of the second book. And you'll also get a discount on the ad-free experience of the blog. So if you order a signed copy, you can get the first month ad-free, completely free to you with that monthly subscription. If you prefer a yearly subscription, you will get a reduced price as well. I'll give you a simple code once you put your order in, and it basically comes down to just paying $5 a month if you buy the annual subscription. The monthly subscription is $6.99 a month for ad-free. If you visit often, this might be something you might be interested in. But again, pre-ordering the book is available, but let me read you an excerpt. This actually comes from chapter 4. And the title of the chapter is Be Your Own Brand, Thriving in Your Career. And while this chapter is about building our brand, you'll find that it encompasses so much more. So here we go. I was introduced to Julia Child in the 1990s, near the end of her career, and immediately became intrigued by the mighty, authentic, and engaging woman who knew how to cook like nobody's business. I fully engaged with Nora Ephron's 2009 film, Julie and Julia, starring Meryl Streep. I have since dived deeply into Julia's journey in France and Europe, how she came upon her passion of cookbookery, as she called it, and how she knew it was to be her path. My Life in France, the last book Julia Child wrote before her death, includes the quote above. Now that I had started writing, I found cookbookery such fulfilling work that I intended to keep at it for years and years. Julia Child. And the moment I read it, I highlighted it, reread it, dog-eared it, and double dog-eared it. In other words, I acutely understood the feelings she describes. In her book, The Martha Rules, Martha Stewart said it another way, and I am sure Julia Child would agree, as she is the best model for this idea one can imagine. Quote, build your business success around something that you love, something that is inherently and endlessly interesting to you. End quote. Sometimes we simply stumble into our happy place. I share in my first book, Choosing the Simply Luxurious Life, how my blog came to life in 2009. By no means was it planned, calculated, or expected. Now, nearly 10 years later, like Julia Child, I cannot imagine not writing, blogging, exploring the world, and sharing my discoveries with the readers who stop by the blog, listen to the podcast, or view my cooking vodcast. But full disclosure, if you had asked me a year before the Simply Luxurious Life began what I was interested in, I would not have said blogging. I did not know anything about blogging, let alone HTML coding, linking, etc. But my curiosities led me onward and to where I am now. The most frequent question I receive from readers is, how do you balance a blog and a writing career while teaching full-time? The truth is that the fuel comes from my sincere interest in what I do. The second most common question is, how do you always have something to write about? My answer is that I remain incessantly curious about the life I am living and the world I live in. In the process, I unearth a lot of unknowns, and therein can lie fear, but also the spark of creativity. How so? Elizabeth Gilbert shared her secret in her book, Big Magic. Quote, creativity and fear will always be linked. When you try to create a life without fear, you murder creativity. End quote. A few cases in point from my own life. As I prepared my first book, I elected, without hesitation, but without any guarantee of how it would work out, to engage an editor who is an expert in the field. An investment, but a risk that ended up being worth taking. The redesign of the Simply Luxurious Life blog in 2016 was a significant investment, but one I believed, but was not guaranteed, would enhance the direction of the blog I had in mind. And in many ways, my choice to move to Bend, one of the most expensive small towns in the Pacific Northwest, was a complete gamble, and some might have said a foolish decision. But to remain where I was would have been to give in to living with fear, and I knew I was capable of growing even further. Gilbert says that as long as we do not give fear the wheel to drive our lives and instead keep it in the back seat, we can use it as motivation for unearthing the truth and not running scared, building a life of structure and rigidity to protect us. A desire to spark endless creativity and accept that I cannot make my life free of all unknowns informs the Simply Luxurious Life brand. As I continue to be fueled by the life I live, and as proof that fear of the unknown is a spark for creativity, my move to Bend, Oregon involved great curiosity. Of course, I had fears, and I still do, which is one reason the brand has evolved into an even more authentic online destination. Once we set ourselves free, we come upon another truth that can be hard to swallow. Lauren Wollstonecraft writes, quote, there's no magic formula for success. Ultimately, it's about believing in yourself, making realistic goals, believing you can achieve them, and going for them without hesitation, end quote. Wollstonecraft knows what she is talking about. When she was born, she was missing her left arm below the elbow and both legs below the knees. Yet she became a competitive skier as a teenager and was a medalist at the Paralympic Games. She defied the odds, and it began with her belief in herself. Ultimately, each of us needs to find what interests us tremendously and, quote, keep tremendously interested in it, end quote, to borrow Julia Child's sage comment. We do actually have all the answers to realizing the passion we are seeking within ourselves. We just need to find the courage to explore ourselves. That is from the new book, which will be released November 13th, 2018, Living the Simply Luxurious Life, Making Your Everydays Extraordinary and Discovering Your Best Self. I'll provide a link on the show notes for you to pre-order if you're interested, and all the other information about the extras that come with the pre-ordered book that's going to be signed will be there as well. I want to thank everyone for their questions. I wish I could have got to them all, but hopefully many of them were answered today, as a lot of them were similar in their subject. Before I wrap up and get to the petit plaisir, I want to just say that the next few episodes will be on the road. I'm taking my hand recorder with me as I travel to France, and we'll see how it goes. I've tested it here at home, and it worked well. So my hope is that it will all work on the road. I don't know what the topics will be, but I do know that I'm excited to share what I discover on my travels. Now, for the show notes of today's episode, visit the blog, thesimplyluxuriouslife.com, podcast 214, and I'll be right back with this week's Petit Plaisir. All right. So this week's Petit Plaisir is a podcast for Francophiles. If you love Paris, love the history of it, love the new direction that Paris seems to be going in a lot of different ways, but at the same time stays true to its history, you're going to enjoy the podcast called The New Paris. And it debuted last year by author Lindsay Tremuta, who is the blogger behind Lost in Cheeseland. Her new book came out last year in 2017 titled The New Paris. And so this podcast parallels that in many ways. She shares hosting duties with co-host Alice Kavanaugh, who is a fashion journalist and the author of the latest Wallpaper Guide to Paris. And there are a bunch of different local experts that join her on the podcast as well. It's thoughtful, it's insightful, and it's up to date. You're going to learn in real time, for the most part, what's going on in Paris in the culture with regards to food, with regards to fashion, with regards to everything that you might be curious about. I have just started listening, so it's new to me, even though she has quite a few episodes out. But I have enjoyed their back and forth, their different insights. They don't see everything the same way, which I think is helpful. But they definitely give some great food for thought on Paris and whether it's changing, where it's not changing, where it's staying the same. So the podcast is called The New Paris, and I will have all that information on the show notes, the simplyluxuriouslife.com, podcast 214. I hope you've enjoyed this week's Petit Plaisir, where each week ideas are shared to make the everyday all the more enjoyable. Tune in at the end of each Monday's podcast, where I'll recommend a book, a film, or a recipe, anything that is a simple pleasure to satiate your sophisticated taste. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and have a wonderful week.